2 announcements for you today. The first one is Flatirons Music has 2 events coming up. One's their night of worship at our Denver campus, and the next one is playing at the Avs game after the game. So if you want tickets to either event, go online to flatironsmusic.com and get those ASAP. They're gonna sell out. The last announcement I have for you is the one that's really, really important to me. It's 1 month away from baptism weekend. So do me a favor, and if you're coming from out of town, let us know in the comments. It's October 26th and 27th, so whether you're coming alone, with family or friends, or maybe with your group, I'd love to get to meet you and hear your story and hear about how you heard about Flatirons, why you attend online, and specifically why you decided to get baptized. So go ahead and put those in the comments as we join the rest of the campuses for week 3 of 90,000.
So glad you're here. Let's stand up. Let's sing together. Here we go. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I was breathing but not alive, and all my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I is heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter. Come on, sing that this morning. But you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. 'Cause when you call my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness, into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Oh, out of the darkness, into your glorious day. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. I will count every blessing. I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. My God, forgive my sin. You, my God, heal my brokenness. In you, my God, my life redeemed. You crown me with love and with mercy. Oh, come on, let's sing that chorus again. Come on. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. I will count every blessing. I will never forget. Oh, my soul will praise the Lord. In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. To reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, or even in your suffering, you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake, you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death, and the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored, and the Church of Christ was born. Then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Sing praise to the Father, our King of Kings. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. We sing praise the Father, praise the Son, oh we praise the Spirit, three in one. You're the God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Morning, how are we doing today, guys? So good to be in this room with you this morning. Take a second, say hi to the people around you, then you can go ahead and take your seats.
What's up, Flatirons? How we doing this morning? Hey, just want to say welcome, everybody at all of our campuses. We're so glad that you're with us. To our friends, our family at God Behind Bars, we are so glad that you join us. You're part of the family. We just want to welcome you this morning. So glad that you're with us. I got to tell you, as we start out, I love most parts of my job. Like, you guys are so good to us. This is just an unbelievable church to be a part of. My wife and I moved our family across the country 7 years ago to be a part of this place, and God is up to something special here. So I love most parts of my job. I love the people that I get to work with. I love Colorado. Okay, you can't beat living in Colorado. There's one part of being a pastor that I'm not too crazy about, and that's when I'm like, at a friend's party or at a social function that has nothing to do with church, and I get in a conversation with somebody, and then they ask me what I do for work. Because I know the moment I tell them I'm a pastor, the whole conversation changes. And some of you guys know this. You've been on the other side of this before you started to come to church. You start talking to a pastor, and here's what inevitably happens, okay? Inevitably, when I say I'm a pastor, they step back. They take a step back, and they go, Oh, that's nice. That's nice. That's really nice. And when you say nice in a high-pitched voice, you don't mean nice, okay? Like, that's when your boss tells you, like your new boss tells you that they're a Raiders fan or something. You're like, oh, that's nice. That's nice. I'm trying to be supportive, but I don't know what to say here. And like everything changes, and then they start thinking really hard about everything that they're saying. They're like, I've got to speak the language that the pastors speak. And so they start using words like blessed a lot more than they were earlier. And like occasionally they'll ask me like, so tell me about your parishioners. And when I first heard this word from somebody who didn't go to church, I was like, I don't know what that word means. And so I looked it up, and you all are parishioners, okay? So if you don't learn anything else for the rest of the day, know that you all are the parishioners. And then they almost always ask me this question, and it's like they've been wanting to ask this question for a long time. They go, so I'm just curious, since you only work on Sundays, what do you guys do all week? And I try to be like kind of, and my wife has like been with me in these interactions, and she's like, you know that when you like tell people that you're a pastor, you say it almost like it's a disappointment, like, I'm a pastor. And I was like, I know that's what I do. The reason I do that is because I know that everything's gonna change, okay? They're gonna like grab their beer and put it behind their back. And they think about how many times they said a cuss word before they found out I'm a pastor. And like they try to figure out how to get out of the conversation as quick as possible. I mean, that happens almost every time. It's the one part of my job that I'm not crazy about. And I don't know if there are pastors who are sitting in the room or watching online, they can relate to that, but I think all of us can relate to it in one way or another, because when people at work find out that you're a Christian, for those of us in this room who would say, yeah, I'm a Christian, I'm following Jesus, when the people at work find out that you're a Christian, it kind of changes everything. They start treating you differently. They expect for you to act differently, and sometimes that's in a good way, sometimes it's in a not so good way, but everything changes right there. And so we're in this series, we decided that we're going to do a series to talk all about what faith looks like at work, and we called it 90,000. And if you haven't been here for the last 2 weeks, 90,000 is the number of hours that you're going to work over the course of your lifetime. It's a quarter of the time that you spend awake, you're going to spend at work. It's a massive chunk of time. And because of that, work matters to God. And so today we're going to get really, really practical. We're going to get practical today because if work matters to God and what we do for work matters to God, then how we act at work probably matters to God too. Because when people find out that you're a Christian, when people at work find out you're a Christian, they're naturally going to make some assumptions about God based on what they see in you. And to illustrate this, every parent has experienced this in one way or another. When your child is acting like you, people will look at that and they'll say, oh, it's your spitting image, right? Like they'll say, your kid's your spitting image. And for parents, we realize this, okay? I've got 4 young kids, and I know that their behavior actually reflects on my image. People are gonna make some assumptions about my character and my parenting based on the way that my kids act. That's just reality. You've done this, you've had this done to you, and this is the thing that's horrifying for parents of young kids, is that when people are making assumptions about like my character and my parenting based on my kids' behavior, like it's horrifying, because parents in the room know this. We have no control over what our kids do. Like, we've got no control. I remember back when I was the West Campus pastor a few years back, my son Gray came up to me before services, And he had this question. He goes, Dad, are you the boss of the church? And like anytime a kid's asking that question, you know they're up to something. And so I didn't really want to answer him. I wanted to get out of it as much as I could. And I thought about it. I was like, hey, great, actually, Jesus is the boss of the church. And I thought, like, that's a good theologically accurate, if you look at Colossians, that's theologically accurate. And Greg goes, no, Dad, no. And I know I should be concerned that he's so passionately opposing Jesus being the head of the church, okay? But he has his agenda. He's like, no, Dad, I'm talking about flat irons. Flat irons. Are you the boss of flat irons? And again, he gave me an out. So I was like, buddy, I'm not the boss of flat irons. Pastor Jim is the boss of flat irons. He's the boss of all the campuses. And Greg goes, no, Dad, no, the West Campus. Are you the boss of the West Campus? And I was like, yeah, I'm the boss of the West Campus. And I go, buddy, why do you want to know that? He goes, no reason. And he heads to kids ministry. I go upstairs. I'm thinking, this can't be good. I walk back downstairs, and like before I pick him up, I see his teacher right outside the room, and she goes, so I hear you're the boss of the West Campus. I was like, of course. She goes, and Grace said, because you're the boss of the West Campus, I needed to give him extra candy. I was just like, Gray, why would you do this, okay? This is reflecting on my image. And then I asked her for some candy because I'm the boss of the West Campus, okay? Like, my son, Gray, he was born in my image, and the way that he acted down in kids ministry reflected on my parenting. It reflected on me. And as Christians, we're made in God's image. There's this idea that if you follow Jesus, you're an image bearer of God. The idea is that people can look at you and they can make assumptions about God based on what they see in us. So Flatirons, how are we doing with that? How are we doing with that? When people look at the way that you are at work, what would they think of God based off of that? I mean, is God kind and generous? Does he put in the extra effort? Is he hardworking? Is he forgiving? Is he gracious? Is he kind? Or is he kind of lazy? Is he get angry a lot? Or selfish, jealous? Is he mean? Here's the thing, how we act at work matters, because people are going to look at the way that we act at work, and they're going to make some assumptions about the God that we follow. And I'll be honest, most of the time, as Christians, we don't really know how to do this that well. It just doesn't come naturally to us. And so we do whatever we can. So we'll turn on K-Love or another Christian radio station in the office, and we turn it up just loud enough so that other people can hear it. We'll do stuff like, or we'll get these like t-shirts that have these ironic Christian designs, like it's got the Heinz ketchup logo, only it says ketchup with Jesus, and we're like, this is how I do it. Or your coffee mug says, all I need in the morning is coffee and Jesus. Or you eat at Chick-fil-A like 3 times a week, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or we put a fish on our computer or our van or our business card. And I'll be honest, I've seen some of you guys drive, okay? I don't have a fish on my car for that very reason, all right? I don't want the way I drive reflecting on Jesus. I'm not making fun of any of these things. Obviously, you guys love Chick-fil-A, okay? Because you love all good things, okay? You love Jesus. But a lot of the times, we think this might be like the right way to be a good image bearer of God in the workplace. And at the same time, I think all of us, we know that there's got to be a better way. So today we're going to camp out in a question. And it's this. If we could only do one thing to reflect the image of God to our coworkers, to the people around us, and to the world, what would it be? If we could only do one thing. And here's how the Bible responds. Be great at what you do. Be as good as you can possibly be at whatever it is you do, whatever talents, whatever skills, whatever abilities God placed inside of you. Leverage them as much as you possibly can to be as great as you possibly can. And I know you're thinking, Jesse, I thought you were going to say, be nicer to the people at work, or something about character or how we treat people, be a better person at work. And we know that you got to hear me out. That matters, okay? You can't be great at what you do and at the same time treat people at work horribly. It's not be great at whatever the cost. No, what should happen is as you continue to follow Jesus, our character should actually start to look like the character of Jesus. And eventually, we should start treating people more and more the way Jesus would treat them. But here's the thing. We talk about that all the time in here. I mean, every week you're going to hear about what it looks like for your character to start to line up to the character of Jesus, how we can become more and more like him. That's our third value, intentional apprenticeship. But we're in this series dedicated toward work. We're the 90,000 hours we'll spend working over the course of our life. And so specifically, I want to say today during the work series, I want to be crystal clear. When it comes to work in God's image, be great at what you do. Be great at what you do. Ben opened this whole series with this thought. The first sentence in the Bible is this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So in the beginning, we see that God got to work. And then as he's finishing up creating everything that you and I know and love, he creates mankind in his image. So you and I, we were created in the image of a working God. And then a few verses later, God steps back. He surveys everything that he's made. And Genesis 1:31 says this: God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. He steps back, looks at everything, and goes, that's so good. And you've had moments like this. We've all had moments like this where we just step back and go, that's so good. Like you get a steak that's cooked perfectly. And at the end of the meal, you like put your hands on your stomach, you're like, that was so good. Or you go see a movie and there's like great directing, there's great acting, there's great writing. Everything about the movie was great. And you lean over to the person you went and saw it with, you're like, that was so good. Or you watch the Broncos play football and you lean back and you're just like, that was so good. Can't really say that right now, can we? All right, but you guys get the point. I believe in a turnaround, by the way, as long as we can win the game today. So that's all I'm saying. No pressure, guys, but please, 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 let's turn it around. You guys get the idea. When God creates, he doesn't create okay. When God creates, he doesn't create good enough. When God creates, he doesn't step back, survey it all, and say, it was fine. No, God creates very good. God creates great. Whenever God does something, he does it with excellence. I mean, think about this. God could have created our world however he wanted to. He really could. He created it. He could have created a baseline, livable, utilitarian planet. All it has is what we need to survive, and that's it. But God knew lasagna is going to be delicious, and so he creates the world that you and I know and love. He creates everything. He puts his finishing touches on it. He adds his personal flair to it. I mean, think about a couple examples. Think about mountains, okay? Like I told you before, I love living in Colorado. When you leave one of our campuses today, walk outside and just look at the mountains for a little bit. And if you're watching online and you don't live in Colorado, sorry. Maybe move here or something. No. They're not as cool as you think that they are. Everybody watching online, we don't need any more traffic. So anyway, God didn't have to create mountains. We could survive just fine with a world that's flat and round, but no mountains, no texture to it. But he knew that we'd enjoy them. And so he adds his finishing touches to it. He makes it great. Think about sunsets. I mean, there's nothing like watching a sunset over the mountains, okay? And I don't know why the sunset looks as pretty as it does. I'm sure there's something scientific to it. I don't know why it looks the way that it does, but here's the thing. All I know is that it's beautiful, and it didn't have to be. God created it that way. He could have created it so that when the sun goes down past the horizon, it just goes from light to dark just like that. But instead, we get the sunset. We get all these colors because he knew that we'd enjoy it. He knew that we'd enjoy what it looks like. He adds his finishing touches to it. And think about coffee, okay? And I'm talking like craft coffee, like Otis, Sweet Bloom, Corvus, or pumpkin spice lattes. I'm not afraid to admit it, okay? Think about anything like that. Think about good coffee. We don't need coffee to survive, kind of. We could live without coffee, but it's delicious. It wakes me up in the morning. It keeps me regular, okay? And I'm gonna let that one sit. Ben told me we're doing poop jokes this series, and so that's the best I could do. Ben, that one's for you, okay? That one's for you. You could think of 100 different things. You could think of probably more of things that we could do without. But when God created, he didn't just create good enough. He created great. He created very good. And he invites us into creating with him, into working with him to move the creation project forward. It's tied into what Ben said 2 weeks ago when he said, God says, join me in making something great of this place. And if we're joining God to make something great of this place, in his image, would we do that work poorly? I want you to tell me which of these examples better reflects the image of God. It's a Christian who shows up at work in a "What Would Jesus Do" t-shirt, and then does subpar work and slaps a fish on it, calls it good. Or the Christian who humbly and quietly comes to work day after day and crushes it day after day. And when somebody takes notice, when somebody notices and asks about the great work, they say, I do great work because it's inspired by the great work of Jesus. I mean, which one? Which one better reflects the image of God? And I got to tell you, if you're wearing a "What Would Jesus Do" t-shirt to work and you're doing subpar work, that's simply not what Jesus would do. Jesus would be great at whatever he tried. He would be great at his craft. He would be a great boss or a great coworker or a great employee. I mean, think about it. For Jesus' first miracle in John chapter 2, he turns water into wine. Jesus did hundreds of miracles throughout his ministry where he's helping people who don't have enough food get food. He heals people who can't walk or people who can't talk or can't see. He helps people have the basic necessities of life. But for his very first miracle, he's not doing that. In the image of his Father, he's taking something that's okay, something that's maybe good, and he's adding to it, and he's making it great. So we see that Jesus, he's at a wedding in the town of Cana. And Cana is a small town. Maybe 100 people lived in Cana. And he's at this wedding, and the wedding runs out of wine. The hosts run out of wine. And today, that'd be a party foul at a wedding if the hosts run out of wine. But back then, like, that stigma would follow you throughout the rest of your life. You would always be known as the couple that ran out of wine at your wedding. And so we see Jesus step in. We pick up the story in John chapter 2, verse 6. Said, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons each. And Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. And then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. And they did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you saved the best till now. And this detail right here is why I love the Bible. Because we got the master of the banquet, and he's just amazed at the quality of the wine. He says, hey, usually you serve the best stuff first. That's when people just get to the party. They're noticing what they're drinking. But after they've had too much to drink, another translation said their senses have been dulled. Wink, wink. That's when you bring out the White Claws, okay? That's when you bring out Rolling Rock. Like, that's how you do it. But you didn't do that. You saved the best until last. And I got to point it out. Cana is a small town, and so we've got reason to believe that this is like not a large wedding, maybe 100 people. And Jesus takes 6 jars that each hold 20 to 30 gallons each, and he fills them with water, then he turns that water into wine. And so Jesus makes 150 gallons of wine for a wedding of 100 people. I know what you're thinking. Best wedding ever, okay? But the thing is, Jesus is not intending for people to get drunk. That's not why he created this. It's a message. When you need something from me, you're not getting just enough, and you're not getting good enough. You're getting more than enough, and you're getting the best that I have to offer. That's the way that Jesus does things. And you've experienced that. I mean, if you follow Jesus, you can think back to the time where you're lost, like the song said, lost and without hope, and Jesus steps in and gave you more than you needed. He showed up in a powerful way. You've experienced this. After some of Jesus' other miracles, it said that people were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they say. When Jesus did something, he did it with excellence. when he partnered with God to make something great of this place, he did his best. He was great at what he did. Our God was great at his work. Our Savior was great at his work. And you and us, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know that you'll receive an inheritance from the Lord as your reward. It is the Lord Christ you're serving. Ben mentioned this verse last week, whatever you do, do it with all your heart. And that phrase, with all your heart, it doesn't even really do the original word justice, okay? The Bible was originally written in Greek in the New Testament, okay? And the word that we translate with all your heart is the word suke. So it's this word called suke. It's the very same word that was used when God breathed life into the very first people, okay? This is the sum of everything that God put inside of them. That's what the word suke means. That's what it means. So God's saying, whatever you do, whether it's plumbing or ticket sales, whether it's engineering or teaching or management or art, you take everything that I've put inside of you and you put it all into joining me to make something great of this place. You're my workmanship. I created you on purpose for a purpose with very specific gifts and abilities. Now go leverage it and be the very best that you can be. Here's the thing, we reflect his greatness when we do that, but also greatness is magnetic. As a culture, we're naturally drawn to greatness. We'll even give greatness a platform that we typically wouldn't give to other people. I want you to think about this, okay? Think about when would you take a group of 20-year-olds who had gone to 1 year of college, and then they stopped going to college, and you sit these 20-year-olds down at a table and you surround them with reporters. And you're going to ask them a bunch of questions. And some of the questions might range from like current affairs or the status of the city. You might ask them about culture or politics, maybe religion, philosophy. And then you're going to take what they say and you're going to broadcast it all around the world. Would we typically do that? Probably not. Unless they're professional athletes. And if they're professional athletes, we do that all the time. Because they're great at what they do, it gives them a platform to talk about things that have nothing to do with what they do. And we do this with great actors and great actresses. We do it with recording artists. We do it with celebrities. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just reality. Our culture is attracted to greatness. And maybe you've experienced this on a personal level too. Maybe when you were in high school, you were a freshman on the football team, and the senior quarterback, he was like an all-star of all-stars. He was just so good at what he did, and so you studied him, and you're like, how does he practice? How does he prepare? How does he watch game film? What drills is he doing? You tried to figure out everything it was about how he did what he did so that you could become as good as he was because he was great at what he did. Or maybe you started your career, and your boss, she was the best boss that you've ever had. She had very high standards for people, but at the same time, she was kind to everybody that she worked with. And so you watched her and you paid attention to her. How does she do what she does? What's she thinking? How's she leading? Because you wanted to become a leader like her. You paid so much attention to her and you wanted to learn all of her secrets, what was behind the work that she did because she's such a great leader. And I wonder if that could be the same for us. I mean, if we apply ourselves to our craft, you become the best realtor or the best barista or the best engineer or the best stay-at-home mom or athlete or student or leader. You become the very best you can be at your career. In God's image, you become great at it. And then when people, they ask you, what's behind it? How did you start doing such great work? You can be honest. You tell them, it starts with my faith. And now you've got a platform to share your faith with them in an authentic and a genuine way. And you've got a captive audience who wants to listen. How we act at work, it matters. You guys know this. But I do want to call it out in the middle of this series. There might be a little disconnect here. Because here's the thing, what you do for work and what I do for work, it's just different. What you all do for work and what Ben does for work, it's just different. Ministry is different than working in corporate America. Like, it just is, it's different that way. And Ben and I have been diligent talking to different people, hearing from people who are in the workplace, what does our church need to hear from God about work, this 90,000 hours we spend at work? But at the same time, I understand what we do, it's just different. Because at church, we just sit around all the time and like read our Bibles, and when you work at church and think about Jesus and encourage one another. And so here's what we've done. We wanted to have a time during this series where we had people from our church, various locations, various campuses, in various professions. And these people, they're in the workforce. And we just wanted them to talk about with you all what their experience has been at work. So I want to introduce you to a couple people. So guys, why don't we start out and just We asked you guys to talk about your work experience because all of you guys are in different stages of your career. You do different things, and what you do and what you say is going to apply to different people across the board in the room. So will you just start out and share your name and what you do for work?
Yeah, I'm Alan Ginsborg, and I own and develop shopping centers.
I'm Kate Mans, and I own a hair salon that specializes in balayage.
And for those of us that don't know what balayage is,
It's a French style of hair painting.
it's hair painting.
Yes, hair painting. Highlights.
So can you paint could she paint my hair? Could you paint my hair?
It's going to take a lot of hours.
I wouldn't have thought it would take that a lot of hours for this little hair.
Do the extensions,
Extensions,
Yeah.
that's what I need. I need some. Janae, what do you do for work? Yeah.
I'm a mom and baby nurse.
You're a mom and a baby nurse.
Yep.
And you were telling me, we were talking about work earlier this week, and I feel like for those people who are in the medical profession, what Ben talked about last week, where he talked about come up with a mission statement, I serve people by, you guys kind of have it easy, I serve people by keeping them alive, keeping them from dying. But you've taken it a step further that way, and just, you looked at the way that you work as a way to serve people. Can you just talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times I have to see the intimate part of people. I know their history, their diagnoses, medications they're on, or their social history, if there's anything there. Wow. And then on top of that, I'm having a brand new mom, and I get them up to go to the bathroom for the first time. They see themselves in the mirror for the first time and not recognize their own body. So they're being very intimate with me. And so what I try to do is allow them to get to know me on that level as well. So telling them, I've been there too, I had 2 kids, this is my story, these are the things that went wrong or my struggles, and just bring it to a relationship, Me Too type of thing that Flatirons talks about.
Yeah, and you were talking about sometimes there's an opportunity to be open about your faith at work, and then other times there's not. I think that everybody in the room wrestles with that or thinks about it, how much should I be open about my faith in the workplace? How have you made that work for you in what you do?
Yeah, there's circumstances that I feel are perfect to pray with people, and one of those instances was I had a mom that had some medical issues and had to stay at the hospital, but her baby had to be life flighted to a children's hospital. Oh, wow. And so in those circumstances, it was just obvious that that's a time that I could ask her if she would like to pray, and yeah.
But you don't pray with everybody that you see. It's just kind of you're just paying attention that way. Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And then, Kate, you all own a business, and it's in Boulder. Can you just talk about, Boulder is not the most open to Christianity from, what we've read in the Daily Camera about our church or anything like that. Just tell us about the decision to start a business in the middle of Boulder.
Yeah, it was very strategic. We really wanted to be in Boulder, and we felt like God really called us to downtown. We looked for a location for almost 2 years, just because we really wanted it to be, maybe on Pearl, and just try to find, and we're right at 9th and Pearl.
Wow.
And just to try to be a light, we picked bright colors, and we were very strategic about where we went. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so your staff know that you're a Christian. They know about your faith, right?
Right.
How does that
and not
impact?
right away. It just comes naturally, and hopes that I've I have integrity in what I do, and so maybe later down the line when it comes up, that I'm a Christian, they're like, oh, good, there was, we noticed something different. But yeah, they definitely know I'm a Christian.
Sure. But it's not, you were sharing with me earlier, again, it's not this thing where like, tell everybody about the values of the company. I think that'd be so helpful to just say like, the values of the company were inspired by what Jesus says, right?
Right. They're definitely Jesus values, just not with Jesus' name. So really love with no strings attached, and serve each other, serve our guests. And hopefully if I'm serving them and loving them, that spills over on them, then they will spill over on the people coming in. And soon we'll have, we'll be the friendliest business in town.
That's cool. Yeah. That's great. I think that's so awesome. And then Alan, you've been in the workforce for a while. What does it look like for you to express your faith in an authentic way in what you do?
It's not about pushing an agenda. It's about living an agenda that is based on the Bible solely. And so it shows up in different ways. A mindset of serving. I've been involved with nonprofits my whole career because I love it.
Sure.
I feel that's why I'm here. And so make it available to my team, but don't force it, but live it.
Sure.
And they're aware of it. And sometimes they participate. And it's about having certain non-negotiables that, that's a line I won't cross, and be willing to stand on those things without thumping my Bible saying this is why. But if someone asks, hey, great, I'm happy to explain.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that I'm going to make a lot of mistakes all along the way, pretty much every day, more than once. And, leading and coming alongside people with humility, seeking forgiveness, and then also being willing to accept that nobody's perfect. They're going to make mistakes too. Everybody does. Let's not make the same mistake 3 times.
Sure.
Let's learn from it. But hey, that's life. And
Sure.
so, being gracious that way. So
That's great.
I think those things really, really help.
I love that all of you guys talk a lot about character. And like we talk about that so much around here, how character matters. And then Kate, you were telling me about times where you don't really live up to your personal values,
Right.
your character doesn't line up. Like, what does it look like for you to be a Christian when you're like, I actually screwed up here, I made a mistake?
Right. I mean, in my industry, gossip can happen, and we really try to have like a zero tolerance policy. But there's been a time where I've been frustrated with someone who came in, and I've voiced it to one of my employees, and I had to go back personally and apologize to each one, like, hey, I didn't live up to what the leader I want to be, and really ask for forgiveness and to start fresh. So.
And I would assume that when they see somebody who's a Christian say, I was wrong, and ask for forgiveness, that really makes an impact on them.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you say
it was good. I mean, I think I can say, like, I'm a hypocrite too sometimes, and it kind of breaks down a wall, and it gets, it allows them to be able to come to me with their mistakes, and kind of this open environment. So.
That's cool. That's great. And Janae, tell me what it looks like for you to be a Christian with your not with the people you work with.
Yeah. I think a lot of times Christians feel the need to like only show the good side because Jesus is in our life, and so apparently it's all good,
Sure.
So I think it's good just to have the real relationship. Let them know, like, we're having issues in our marriage, finances, whatever, with your coworkers, and that they know that the fake perfect life isn't real. And so why not just be real with them? And that Christianity is about the relationship of talking through that and that kind of thing. And then on top of that, just being a good coworker, helping out when they need help, and yeah.
That's great. And you were telling me about this time that you were in a situation, it was a past job where they were asking you to do something that kind of violated your values, violated what you thought was the right thing to do based on what you believe. And I'm sure that people in the room are feeling similarly, like they might have that tension, like there's the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do, there's everything in between, and I feel like my boss is asking me to do something that doesn't line up with what I believe. Can you just share that story and how you navigated that?
My first job after nursing school, I worked in a nursing home for 2 years. And throughout the years, I realized there was things going on behind the scenes that just weren't right. And one of those things was we were diagnosing residents with an infection longer than they actually had. So like their cultures and blood work came back and it looked great, but then we were still charging them for an isolation room by themselves instead of putting them back in the room with their like roommates basically. So at that point, like I knew I had to say something, so I talked to my manager and there was nothing that she could do, she said, and so then I talked to her boss. And ultimately it's about money. And so me and my husband had to sit down and have a conversation about what we needed to do. And so I started looking for new jobs. But it was really hard because it's not only a paycheck, but I made relationships with these people for 2 years, and leaving them and feeling like I was leaving them in hands that were corrupt, basically, was really hard. But soon after I left, I found out that the FBI was involved and actually shut down that and a few other nursing homes in the area. So.
Wow. I love that you didn't, when you were confronted with something that violated your values and your beliefs, you didn't just immediately pull the plug and be like, I'm out, because that might have done worse damage to Christians' reputations if you would have just left them high and dry. But you sought reparation, you talked to your manager, you talked to the people who ran everything. You went through every line of authority to try to make a change before you eventually had to step out. I think that's going to be really helpful to people as they're in situations like that. Kate, I want to ask you, so you own a business, you're a part of the church, you're married, you got 4 young kids. What's it look like for you to just try to balance being great at work and great at church and great at home and great with your husband and great with your kids? I'm sure that's a tension so many people are walking through. What does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, there's no balance really, but, something fails and then it, and I don't have any secret answer. I'm in a learning position always right now. I'm young in my career, and so, I've got to reach out to people like Alan who have been through, stuff like this before, and right now I have a great group that I'm in here at Flatirons, and we're in this daily Bible study, and so it pops up every morning, and because of my schedule, really the only time I have is like 5 in the morning. So I get up early, and my husband does too. It's actually like a little mini date almost. Like we make coffee, we each have our own like quiet time, and then maybe if there's time we can have a cup of coffee together, So really keeping the word in my heart is number one, but it is really hard. I mean, at least once a week I'll think, what am I doing? I'm not making a difference here. I'm away from my kids today, and I wanted to volunteer at that field trip, and so it is hard. But I think lies can be planted in my head and my heart really easily, and it's from the enemy, it's from me, and I really have to work on replacing that lie with the truth, which is God has you exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're here for a purpose, and you're doing my work. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Thanks. So, Alan, you've had a lot of employees who've worked with you, worked for you. How would you describe a great Christian employee?
The same way I described a great employee who wasn't a Christian, which is they take their work seriously. They show up when they're there. They want to produce a good result for the team. It's not about their own personal success, but seeing the team succeed, which means they're willing to express disagreement respectfully, but with logical reasons, and take a position.
Sure.
That basically they're the type of employee that they would want to have work with them.
That's really good. That's really good. And you've been in the workforce for how many years now? Sorry.
A few decades.
A few decades, yeah. Okay, a few decades longer than we have. So,
yeah, probably.
What advice would you have for those of us who are starting out in our careers? We're pretty early on in our career. Just looking back, what advice would you have for us?
Well, play the long game. Don't take the shortcuts, because They may feel good for a moment, but, really what you're doing is building your reputation based on the character you display every day. And we're going to make mistakes. That's why I said earlier, you got to come back around and seek people's, forgiveness and be transparent. But it's about a consistent, for me, it's about a consistent movement toward the cross in the way that I approach my work. And it's just staying committed to that direction, step after step, mistake, repair, learn, keep growing, keep moving forward. And then you look back and go, wow, that turned out better than I could imagine. It's not perfect, but it does work. So the other big piece is surround yourself with people that, like Kate was saying, that she's got people she's surrounded with. Best is to find a mentor or mentors. You'll probably have multiple mentors along your path who can, maybe they know the Lord, maybe they don't. Ideally they do, and some might. But people who you see who have character, are good at what they do, and you say, that's somebody I want to learn from, and then reach out to them.
Sure. And for those of us in the room who are like, man, having a mentor sounds great, but at the same time, like, how would I even go about starting that process? What would you say to look for? How do you start that process?
Well, I think we all work with people. And so get to know the people you work with or that work around you. They don't have to do the exact same thing we do, but somebody who's ahead of you in experience, and then watch them and then reach out to them and see what they say. And normally those people that would be good mentors are people open to helping other people grow.
That's great. That's right. And guys, as we close up the time on the panel, any closing words for just our people? Anything that you would want to say finally about work?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, no matter what job or occupation you have, it's about relationships and then using Jesus as an example on how to have those relationships and love others.
That's great. Thanks.
I would say just don't be afraid to say you're a Christian at work or share where you go to church. I had a client who was in my chair at one point, and this is when I was kind of afraid to say anything, you get scared of what people, especially in Boulder, think of Christians. And so she was talking about Flatirons specifically, something she heard in the newspaper about.
I'm sure it was good and painted us in a good light.
And, talking about the traffic and going on, and I was just like, what do I do in this situation? Do I say? And so I just was like, you know what, I actually go to Flatirons, and it's awesome. And, it was cool. It was a cool thing to see that, kind of broke down over a wall. She was like, really? That is the last thing I thought I'd hear you say. And
sure.
Yeah, but
I'm sure it changed her perspective a little bit.
It did a little bit, but after that, it kind of broke the ice, and I've been getting better at, being more forward.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks. Alan?
Well, when you own a business, you got to make a profit, but it's not about the money. It's about the way we build relationship with people through that activity that we do. Mm-hmm. And so keeping your eye on, for me, what's best for the party. I negotiate a lot in my work, and so I need to really, I want to understand, I know my position. I want to understand the other party's position well enough to be able to come up with a solution that is probably not perfect for either party, me or them, but it's the best solution for the situation, and one that people go, that guy did the right thing, wasn't perfect, I'll come back.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's good. Guys, thank you so much. Will you guys appreciate these people? Thank you, guys. As we close up our time together, I want to tell you about a man. He's one of the greatest composers in history. Some people would argue that no music, that he's the greatest composer in history. A man by the name of Johann Sebastian Bach. So Bach, all right, somebody appreciates him. Somebody knows music, one of us. He composed over 1,000 songs. I think it's 1,150 songs or something. Some of his songs are widely considered some of the best songs that are ever written. So he's like the 18th century version of Nickelback, all right? So I don't care if people laugh at that joke. I laugh at that joke. I think it's funny. So But here's the thing about Bach, who is considered one of the greatest composers in history. On every piece of music that Bach composed, before he wrote his own signature, he wrote 3 letters, S, D, G. And those letters, they stand for the Latin words Soli Deo Gloria, the Latin words for glory to God alone. Before you read who wrote the song, you see 3 letters, S, D, G. Because the song, it was inspired by God. It was written for God. Glory to God alone, Soli Deo Gloria. And there was this time back in history where if you wanted something great, you called the Christians. If you wanted something great, call the Christians. Composers, artists, educators, scientists, activists, architects. If you needed to do something great, you call the Christians. You got Bach, Handel, Grapner, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Rembrandt, Yale, Princeton, Brown, William and Mary. They're all started by Christians with the founding purpose that the main end of life and studies is to know God and to know Jesus Christ. You got Galileo and Copernicus, Pascal, Newton, Wilberforce, Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr. And I'm telling you, the architecture, if you've ever been to Europe and you've gone to a cathedral, earlier this year, I went to Germany and walked into a cathedral, and you walk in and it's just overwhelming because there's just design everywhere and it's so intricate. And they'll have like these carvings all around these columns, and these columns go up like 50 feet into the air, and somebody spent years carving out these designs all the way up in a column 50 feet in the air where nobody's ever gonna see it. Why would they carve all the way up there, spend that much work on something that nobody's ever gonna see? They'd say, because God's going to see it. I didn't do this for men, I did this for God. It goes back to Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men. Soli Deo Gloria. And I want you to imagine our church is known for a lot of things in the community, some good, some not so good, but imagine if we were known for some of these things. Imagine if when employers were looking for employees, they specifically looked for Christians because they knew that Christians made the best teammates. I mean, what if someone was making a decision about where to go to work next, and one of the deciding factors is whether they were going to work for a Christian boss because they knew that the Christians were the best leaders? I mean, what if Christians began not just imitating the best music and the best video and the best art of today, but what if we started setting the standard for what artistic expression could look like? I mean, what if when a development needed an architect, they say, call the Christians. When a city needs an engineer, call the Christians. When a school needs a teacher, call the Christians, because they knew that if you're getting a Christian, you're getting somebody great. I mean, what if we did that? And the recognition that would come from that, it wouldn't be about us. It wouldn't be about Jesse. It's not our name. It's not Flatirons. It's not our church. It's Christians. It's followers of Jesus. It's something about these people that model their lives after Jesus. It's about him. It's Soli Deo Gloria. And I'm telling you, greatness is so much bigger than personal fame. It's so much bigger than acquisition. It's so much bigger than success, because your life, your work, your career, it was never meant to point back to you, okay? It's never meant to point back to us. Our work is too meaningful to just point back to us, and we are too small to be the focus of all the work that God created us to do. The focus, it's not on the workers, it's on the work. We're joining together with God to move the creation project forward. We're partnering up with him to do something, to make something great of this place. And we didn't start the work, and we're not gonna finish the work, but we do great work because we were created in the image of a great God, and everything that we do, it points back to him. Soli Deo Gloria. Glory to God alone. So God, as we get ready to worship, God, we're putting some practice into what we're trying to do at work, in our lives, with everything. God, it's not about us. We're taking a few moments to say, this is not about us, God, this is about you. Soli Deo Gloria, glory to God alone. God, I pray this week, God, will you help us identify the areas that we might be holding back, God, the areas where we could step it up a notch. God, we don't want to be great for our sake. This is not about us, God. This is about you. God, you've done such great work for us. You did great work for us on the cross. So God, we want to imitate that. We want to model that. We want to reflect that to the people around us. We want to do great work because you're a great God and you created us in your image. We reflect all the success, all the honor, all the glory back to you. Glory to God alone. Soli Deo Gloria. God, we pray and we worship and we thank you. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. And great are you. Come on, we sing. It is your breath in our lungs, so we pour out. We pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. You give light, you are love, you bring light to the dark. Every voice we sing. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Come on, all the earth, we all sing. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great
Hey, Flatirons, thanks so much for being with us today. If you need prayer for anything at all, we have an awesome prayer team that meets right up here. Buckets are in the back, and other than that, we hope you have a great weekend. Love you guys.